Okay, so the purpose of this exercise is to recreate these logos using basic selection tools in Photoshop, just so we get a little experience playing around with those selection tools and sort of using the options that are available within them. And I've sort of selected a few of these sort of simple logos, all representing different tasks that you would have to do with that selection, be it a new selection, add to selection, subtract from selection, or intersect of that selection. And so, without further ado, let's start. So, essentially, we've got a background layer here, which has those images. I also have it locked as a background, so you can't paint on those original logos, erase them, anything like that, right? So first thing you would do is add a new layer, and you can do that by clicking here at the bottom of the layers palette, and it'll create a new layer. And that way, I would just create a new layer for each one of these logos, and that way it's easier to organize them and be able to distribute them. Okay, so if you access your selection tools, I'm going to sort of recreate the Chanel logo, right? And so if I was going to look at that, looking at these basic selection tools again, I'd have the rectangular or the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to choose the elliptical marquee tool, as those are basically a series of circles in order to make those C's. So one thing we can do is click here on the rulers on the side, and I would sort of pick. I would kind of go to the center of this and say that looks like the center to me, and then I would also click over here. And what I'm doing is I'm just looking to basically kind of eyeball what the center of those circles would be. That way, it's going to be easier for me to sort of pull from the center and create, kind of recreate a selection in order to dump color into those. So first thing, if as I have that marquee tool, ellipsis marquee tool selected, as I click and drag, you'll see that I'm sort of uh, I have a start point, and it just sort of allows me to freeform a circle, really more of like an oval is what it ends up being. So if I hold down Shift while I still have my mouse uh, clicked down, and I'm drawing my circle, if I hold Shift, it actually constrains the proportions of that selection, making a perfect circle. Now, if I hold Shift and Option down at the same time, it actually constrains those proportions, as well as allows me to pull out the circle and enlarge it, or make it smaller from the center point from the point in which I first selected and started drawing the circle itself. Now you can see that I was a little off. So what I would do is, still holding down Shift, still holding down Option, and still holding down my mouse, I'm going to click with my thumb on the space bar, and that will allow me to move the circle independently of where it was first chosen. Now you can see it keeps wanting to like snap here, right? So what we need to do is, I'm going to let go of everything, and I'm just going to make sure that in Photoshop, it's probably the default setting that you have as well. Under View, I'm going to remove this snap. So if I just check on that, it's off, and then let's make that selection again. Remember, holding Option and Shift, I'm going to go out from the center, and I'm going to get pretty close, and then I can hold my spacebar at the same time, and it will allow me to do a really good selection, real tight. I'm going to let go of my mouse first, and that sets the selection. Then I can release the option and select. If you don't let go of the mouse first, then it will, and you let go of Option and Select first, what it will do is just sort of allow you to freeform that circle again, and you'll end up messing it up. Now, some of the options that we have for this selection tool up here in the options bar for the software interface is we have a new selection, an add to selection, subtract from selection, and intersect. Now, what I found to do, at least to make this shape, would be to do the outside selection first, right? And then I'm going to subtract from selection with my next one. So again, I click and start making my selection. Option and Select is held down so I can constrain that proportion, move it from the center, and then I'm just going to use my space bar at the same time, let go of my mouse, and you can see now that it's actually deleted the part of that selection from the interior of that large one. The next thing I would say to do is if we want to make a cut, the easiest way to do that right here, because this is a straight line and that's a straight line, is to use the polygonal lasso tool, which makes straight lines, right? So every time I click, it's going to add a point of reference, and so you can see that it just allows me to draw a straight line, and wherever I want that to end, if I make another click, that's the reference point to it. And then I would just click here, and there's two ways to close this loop. One would be to go back to the beginning, and you see how the little circle appears instead of the the minus sign, I guess. And you can click, and it will in this case subtract from the selection, because that's what we have chosen. Okay, depending on what option you have here, then it will take that action as well. So now we've made a pretty good selection of that. What we would do is make sure that we're on layer 1 right here, and I'm going to fill that selection with a color. In this case, I'll just use the paint bucket tool down here in the contextual toolbox here, and if I click on it, you can see that I've got a few options here: black, white. I've got a background color, foreground color. Based off of my swatches here, the foreground color is black, the background color is white, so I can choose my foreground color or just simply choose black, and it will fill in that selection. And just so that we know it actually did something, I'll turn off the visibility of the background, and you can see that it did in fact add that color. So now that we have not only a selection, but we also have an area of pixels that are selected, I just want to duplicate that same object that I did. Now there's a couple ways to do it. One, I could go up to selection, and I could modify, transform the selection, but I want to show you one other thing. All I have to do, since I already have a selection, is I can use a shortcut, Command J, and it will duplicate that layer. Now, Command Z to go backwards just a step. You can also drag that layer, click on the thumbnail, and drag it down here to the plus sign to duplicate the layer. Now, I can either deselect by clicking down here, or I can Command D to do the same thing. You can see that's deselected my my previous selection there. So anyway, we'll now, if I'm on this copy of the layer, I can transform and flip. These are all the options that I have, but if I flip horizontal, that's going to give me the sort of perfect thing that I'm looking for. And we'll go right here, and so now you can see what we've done is I've made a selection, added the color, and then I duplicated that layer, then transformed it to turn it around and make both of those C's. Now, if we wanted to make sure that everything was just perfectly aligned, we could do a couple things. We can first change the opacity of this layer, but that's not going to help us so much because right now we added black to that color, right? So black on black doesn't really show much. So one thing we could do is just either add a different color, or we can go under the adjustment layer here for the solid color, and so what we would do is go under the effects, and then we would go a color overlay, and we can choose whatever color we want. Let's do this crazy lime green, right? Okay, and okay again. And all that's done is just add an effect to the layer that we can turn on and off, and just allow us to make sure that everything's perfect on this. So if I wanted to move this, I would have my move tool selected, which is V, and I could just use my arrow key, boop, just to bump it and get it perfect. Okay, so now I can turn that off, or I can make it visible. In fact, if I want both of those to be visible, I can hold down Option, since I already have a color or an effect applied to this layer. Hold down Option, click on that effects icon, and drag it to the other layer, and now they both have that color overlay to them. Okay. One more shortcut I want to show you is, since I know that these are going to be the same layer, right? They should be together. I could either select both of them by holding Shift and clicking on them, and go down here to the bottom of the layers palette and create a new group by clicking the folder, and now they're together, right? They're just hidden within that group. The other option I can do is use the shortcut command, which is Command G, and put them in a group. Or I can select this top one, and I can merge down, and you'll see the shortcut command for that is Command E. Again, I work on a Mac, so I'm always just telling you, the shortcuts on a Mac. So you'll just have to, if you're working on a PC, I guess it would be Control E. Okay, so if you merge down, you would now see that both of those are on one layer, and we don't have to worry about accidentally deleting them or whatever. They're on one layer together. And essentially, that's how we're going to go through all of these logos using those simple selection tools, just either the elliptical or the ellipsis one, and or the rectangular marquee. The other one would be using like the polygonal lasso tool to sort of cut things apart.